Hello and welcome to 360 Gamercast, episode 150 for Tuesday, the 24th of January 2023. This is the PS1 Special. Retro or what? And I'm your host, Mark Webb, and joining me today is...
Do not underestimate the power of PlayStation. This is Nick Fights.
And Sensei Switch.
Excellent. I had to do a little bit of research online today because even though the PS1 is one of my favourite systems of all time and there's a lot of great games on there, I was only like 14, 15, was like about 14 when I got it. So it's kind of like those teenage years. So it was a long time ago, and in between then there's been a lot of drinking and smoking and girls and stuff. So it was a bit hard to remember a lot of it, so I've had to do a little bit of research, which has been quite interesting. And then you guys, obviously, just before we hit the record button, just reminded me of some of the other bits and pieces, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, this is the PS1 Special. We are starting off. So we've already done the Xbox series of consoles, and now we're starting off with the PlayStation series of consoles, obviously starting from the very beginning with the PS1, which is what started it all. And it was a really interesting time, really, because at that time of gaming, for those of you that aren't old enough to actually remember it, I'm looking at you, Sly, the big two players in the market were Sega and Nintendo. And I still have a lot of fond memories of arguing with the other nerds on the school playground about which is better, the Mega Drive or the Super Nintendo. And now all those arguments are online on Twitter.
Still never played a Super Nintendo in my life.
Well, I mean, I never actually had a Super Nintendo. I had a Sega Mega Drive.
Yeah, so did I.
But my next door neighbour had a Super Nintendo, and I used to go around there and play that quite a bit, you know, like your Super Mario Karts and all that. But yeah, I feel like I missed out on quite a lot of really good JRPGs from that system. But I think...
There was only two, wasn't he? Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger, and I think you've played both of those now, so...
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. But I think...
Oh, no, you had Legend of Mana and like the Dragon Quest series, Breath of Fire.
Well, we had some of the Breath of Fire games on the PS1 as well.
I think they were ports, so I was joking though, Switch. I know there's more than two RPGs on there, but you know, yeah. I think I played a lot of them later.
Yeah, the most popular ones.
Yeah, I think I played them probably the same as you, Webby, like later on, like on Game Boy Advance.
Yeah,
they ported a lot of the SNES games to the Game Boy Advance. I think I did. So Breath of Fire, and I can't remember the other one now. There was another one like that. Golden Sun. I think that was on there.
Oh, okay.
To be honest, that was what drew me to the Game Boy Advance.
Darren, can you do me a favour? Can you do me a favour?
Can you just... It's basically a portable Super Nintendo.
Darren, can you hear me?
What's that?
Can you just do me a favour and drop out and come back in because you're really cutting out? Yeah, so digging into the history about the PlayStation, it's quite interesting actually, and I think a lot of people will already know a lot of the history anyway. But it's just interesting to go to go through it, right?
Yeah.
So originally, Sony had approached Nintendo to do an add-on and then another joint system together. And this is me just going over it very quickly because I don't have the information in front of me, but I just watched a documentary about a year or two ago. Anyway, they'd basically made done a handshake saying, yeah, we'll do this joint venture. And then it got to E3 or CES or something, one of the big tech.
Yeah, I think it was a CES.
Shows.
I think this was just before E3 was actually a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so CES, and then basically Nintendo fucked over Sony because they'd done the agreement, and then they went to CES, and then and then Nintendo made an announcement that they'd actually done something with, I think it was Philips.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It was Philips.
Yeah.
Basically, Sony and everyone was at the CES show, and they'd done everything, and they were supposed to announce that they're working with Sony and Nintendo were working together to make a CD add-on for the Super the Super NES, as the Americans call it, the SNES.
Yeah.
And so they were all there. Sony were all there, really happy with this announcement, and they're like, "Oh, Nintendo were already doing something, are they?" And they just announced they'd gone with Philips because it was cheaper.
Yeah.
Which really, really pissed off Sony so much that they decided they were going to make their own console. Which
and
got a lot of grace in it because they said it was never going to work.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that is Philips released their console called the CDI, and it was fucking shit, and it flopped.
Yeah, it wasn't
big
very
time.
Good.
So that was
the deal of why we got those bizarre Zelda and Mario games on the Philips CDI, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. They were awful, weren't they? I remember going around one of my mates' houses and he had one, and I was like, "What the hell?" Yeah,
they looked cool. They looked like almost like a cartoon, like good graphics, that sort of cartoony style. Unfortunately, there was hardly any gameplay, and the voice acting was hideous. So then Sony decided they were going to make their own console, and I think a lot of people laughed at them because they were a music company, where they weren't a video game company.
Yeah, they made everything like the Walkmans and the TVs and radios and all that sort of stuff.
Obviously, like you said, there was so many people, companies trying to get into this. I mean, you had like the Philips with the CDO, you had was it the Panasonic 3DO?
Yeah.
So there must have been so many consoles coming out like that early to mid 90s. So I think everyone assumed that this weird PlayStation console was just going to be like that and just be a flash in the pan. Nobody would want to use it and want to make games for it.
Yeah, because there was a lot, as you say, there was a lot of consoles coming out in the 90s. I mean, you had the Atari Jaguar, which was a bit of a commercial flop as well, and I think there was a few others that I just can't remember off the top of my head. But I mean, I just remember the PlayStation very fondly. I mean, it came out in the UK in September 1995.
I got this in our it was 3rd of December 94 in Japan, and then the 9th of September in America, and the 29th of September in the UK.
Europe,
So UK, Europe, sort of thing.
Yeah, so there was quite a big gap between the Japan launch and the rest of the world.
Can you imagine
at least a year or so?
Yeah, almost a full-on year. Can you imagine them getting away with that now?
It wouldn't happen, would it?
I remember PS3 came out a good 4 or 5 months late in the UK and Europe.
Yeah.
I think it came out Easter over here, and it was like November over there, and people were kind of mad about that.
Mm-hmm.
But 2006-07, I think that was just before or just as Facebook started and before Twitter, so obviously, you didn't get as much grief, but...
Yeah.
But I still think, I don't know if you remember this, guys, I still think it's one of the best E3 or whatever it was called moments ever, which was the place where they announced the PlayStation in 1994, where
I never watched it.
Yeah, basically, the guy just walked out on stage because obviously the N64 was coming out.
Yeah.
I think that got delayed a year, so that was supposed to be 95 as well. I think that got delayed a year. The Saturn did a weird stealth release, and
Yeah.
they didn't know it was coming out, and neither did the developers of the games because they apparently Sega just turned up and took all the discs they had and just started printing them before it was finished. But basically, Saturn released for £400 and dollars, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And the head of Sony guy just walked onto stage and just went $299 and just walked off stage.
Yeah.
That's what he did. So he just undercut them by $100.
Yeah, well, I mean, they wanted that. I mean, they wanted that foot in the market, really, and you know, one of the things that I mean, there was a lot of good games for the PlayStation, but I think what really cemented the PlayStation as a force to be reckoned with, in my opinion, was a few things. One was they managed to get the Final Fantasy franchise away from Nintendo with Final Fantasy VII, and it was a system exclusive. And but they all the advertising and the games themselves were aimed at more of like kind of the older teenagers and people in their 20s and stuff, you know, and the rave scene, which was very, very big in that era as well. You think of Wipeout, you know, and it actually had
and stuff like that.
Yeah, had all the actual music from a lot of the dance clubs, and they actually put like PlayStation pods in a lot of nightclubs as well.
Mm.
So they did a really good job of the advertising, which is kind of what Sega did back in the day with the Mega Drive as well. You know, with the Sega does what Nintendo don't. You know. So yeah, I mean, I just want to start off with some of my earliest memories, though, to be honest, because I actually didn't get a PlayStation 1 until 1997, Christmas that year. So I was a couple of years into the life cycle of the PS1. But I remember, before I got it going around my friends' houses and playing games like Twisted Metal, you know, having a blast with that because, you know, in that era, couch co-op and versus games were all the rage. You know, you had your multi-tap, you have up to 4 controllers, right, and you're just playing all these cool games. And so my earliest memory really of the PS1 is playing Twisted Metal, which was a fantastic game back in the day. But my memory of getting the system was quite funny because I got the system Christmas 97. I hadn't, like, you know, I was young, so I'd literally just said to my mum and dad, I just want a PlayStation. I didn't have the forthright thinking to say, oh, I want X, Y, and Z game with it. I just said I wanted the console. So I got the console Christmas, and I only got one game with it, which was Final Fantasy VII. And my mum had said to me, oh, the man at the game shop said that this is the game to get, so we got it for you. And I was looking at the box. I remember looking at the box thinking, this looks awful. What the hell is this? So the only other thing... Yeah, I know. So for the first couple of weeks, I didn't play it. I literally just played the demo disc over and over again. I don't know if you remember the demo disc that come with it. It was fucking great.
Yeah.
I had loads of cool games like this little pirate ship game, which I absolutely loved. And then they had the T-Rex.
Overboard, I think. I think it was called Overboard.
Oh, is that Overboard?
I think it's called Overboard.
Oh, I loved that. That was so good. I played that over and over again.
I mean, demos. We used to just get demos with the magazines, or with they always just give you a demo with the machine as well, didn't they?
Yeah.
So like demo 1. I think I had 2 or 3 by the time I got mine. Probably similar to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll get into demo discs later because that's quite awesome. But yeah. So it took me a couple of weeks, and I thought, oh well, this is the only game I've got. I've got to play it because I've got nothing else to play on this system. And I remember playing it, and it took me a while to get into Final Fantasy VII, and then I was like, whoa. Then the story carried on, as you know, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. But then I remember playing it over the summer. Like, it took me, like, Final Fantasy VII took me months and months to complete, because it's not like now where if you get stuck, you know, you can just go online. I didn't even have the internet then. So I remember being stuck. You remember in Final Fantasy VII where Yuffie steals your materia and goes to Wutai?
Yeah.
Mate, I was stuck there for weeks. I had no fucking clue what to do to get my materia.
It is hard to get back to Wutai if you don't know where. There's normally something like that. You know, there's one in 7, which is that, and also in 8 where you have to find the White Seed ship.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really awkward thing to do. It's, you've got to go here to continue or to do that, but you can't find it. But I think you could just carry on with the story and never go back there. And just
but then you lost all your materia. So
okay, that's what I did, okay? Stop being mean. I didn't have the guidebook like you.
Well, I didn't have a guidebook then, so I remember I went down to the local shop. Remember those? Just the local shop, and we've still got them. But in my local shop, had a magazine section, and it had a guide for Final Fantasy VII, like just in this little newspaper shop. And I was like, I've got to have this. I need to know.
Remember then, they were like magazines, but guides, like guide-zines or whatever they.
Yeah, it was like, it was pretty much a guide-zine. Yeah,
yeah.
It had some, and I had some posters in it as well.
Oh, love a poster.
Which I wish I'd kept now. But yes, I finally managed to finish the game after getting a walkthrough and all that. So that's one of my earliest memory of the PS1, which was great. But yeah, there's a couple of good things about the PS1 era. It wasn't just that console, but that's the console that I remember the most was the demo discs, as you mentioned, Nick. Yeah. I subscribed to the official PlayStation magazine just for the demo discs.
I think most people did. I mean, I worked in the paper shop.
Yeah.
By then, so I used to like save up my money and then get one a month because, like I said, you get like a lot of use out of those demo discs, and you know, that's just how they got games out, didn't they? And you got word of how good a game was through like either your mates playing it and you see it and you're like, I want this, or a demo disc or a magazine. You don't. Now you just, I suppose, Twitter and YouTube.
Yeah, and but the other thing was magazines back in the day. Well, like apart from the demo disc, the magazines were your real only source of information about all the up and coming games coming out, because there was no internet really readily available.
It was really like in its infancy, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I remember getting internet around 98. Maybe around 98.
But also, the only internet there would be was like at schools and things like that, which everything was restricted.
Yeah.
But to actually have I mean, I don't think I didn't have internet like in my house until I paid for it myself when I was like 18.
Yeah. So we got it in around 98. It was obviously dial up, 56K. So you can imagine how slow things loaded then, but obviously, before then, I mean, even after then, it was, the magazine was really your be all and end all, and it was I think it was a really good time to be a gamer, to be honest, because my fondest memories of that era, not just the PlayStation, was there was a lot of independent game shops then. Obviously, you had your electronics boutiques, your game stations, and your games of the world. But in my town, there was a couple of independent game shops, and they were the ones to go to because the people that ran them were really into video games. So I would just go in there and just to chat a lot of the time, and they'd always have like quite a niche selection of games that you probably couldn't find at the bigger boys as well. And they used to do some of the Japanese and American stuff as well, the import stuff.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing back in the day because there was such a gap between games coming out in America and Japan compared to Europe.
To listen to the rest of this week's awesome episode, which is 2 hours and 45 minutes long, regaling the history of the PS1, our favourite games and favourite memories, you need to subscribe to the Patreon. So head on over to patreon.com/360gamercast and you can subscribe from as little as £5 a month. And we will be doing all the specials of the PlayStation, PS2, PS3, PS4 in the near future. And if you're not a subscriber, you have a whole back catalogue of things to listen to. All the special shows that we have done for the Patreon exclusively, including our Xbox series of podcasts, going through the Xbox Original, Xbox 360 and Xbox One. These are episodes not to be missed. So head on over to patreon.com/360gamercast and subscribe today.